Hi, I'm Christina Tobin, and you're joining the Free and Equal Network. Today, I have Amelia Boynton Robinson. She is an American leader of the civil rights movement in Selma, Alabama, and a key figure in the 1965 march in Selma, Alabama, that became known as Bloody Sunday. Thank you, Amelia, for joining me today.
Oh, thank you very much. And you'll have to excuse me because of my hoarseness, but I think I'm coming down with a cold. But just pardon my way and know that I'll try to do the best that I can.
Well, thank you, Amelia. I want to start with our first question today. Your parents were proponents of education and activism. Do you remember and can you describe what things were like when you first campaigned with your mother in 1920?
Well, it was during Women Suffrage when nationally it became a reality. And as my mother was a very, very active part in the community, people looked up to her, and she decided that when women's suffrage became a reality, that with a horse and buggy that my father gave to her, she decided that she was going around and get the women's suffrage who were capable were to come to the registration office and be registered in Savannah, Georgia. And that's where I live. And I sat in the horse and buggy, got out of the car, knocked on doors, rang doorbells, and the people would come out, and they were happy because this is the first time that women had the opportunity to become registered and vote.
It sounds like your parents are as beautiful of a soul as you, Amelia, a great inspiration. My second question, Amelia, in what year did you register to vote, and how did you manage to vote at that time when no African Americans were allowed to run for office or to vote?
Well, I was born with no fear whatsoever. As my mother used to say, be sure you're right, then go ahead. And that always felt that it was my privilege to become a registered voter. And it means nothing to anybody but me if I don't become conscious of the fact of what I should do.
You are a very strong woman, and your reputation shows that. I've studied you, your history, and it seems as if, onto our next question, a huge influence in your life was your husband, Samuel Boynton. What was the most valuable lesson you learned from him, working with him, in the 1930s, 1940s, and 1950s, before the civil rights movement really got going in the way that we understand today?
Well, I can say that he really made me to become an activist, because we were sheltered coming up as a child, as a baby. And we had we had no running around and seeing what people were doing. But our house was built by my father, who was a contractor, and he built an 11-room house, and the young people would come to the house. And the interesting thing about it is our entertainment was that of entertaining ourselves by plans, programs, and that uplifted me as well as the legacy that my mother and father put in our way that we could follow them. And that is the reason why I was not fearful of anything, even until today. I'm not fearful because, just take for instance, coming into Los Angeles, I had people from all over the state saying, "Don't go, you're too old." But I was determined, and I know that when God leads you and you follow, that you are well protected. And I felt that it was my duty to give this life as long as He has given me. It meant that He was going to protect me.
Yeah. No fear. Fear
I
is not an option.
have no fear at all in anything that I do. If I don't want to do it, I'm not going to do it because I'm guided by the Heavenly Father above.
Thank you for that answer, and I understand that you personally knew the great scientist George Washington Carver. He's just a name out of the history books for most of us, but what kind of person was George Washington Carver, and how close to him were you?
Dr. Carver was to me, while in school, that is at Tuskegee University now, but he was a guest speaker, and every 3 months he would come to the schools and speak to us. But before then, Dr. Carver came to Georgia State College when I was maybe about 10 or 12 years old. And he had a high, high voice, very high. And there were two of us. And the lady who brought us, we had to stand until they got through giving those who are in to be seated. And the voice that we heard, it made us laugh. And we were on the outside of the auditorium. And I started laughing, and we giggled, and we giggled. And finally, the lady who took us said, I'm going to put you out of this auditorium if you don't stop giggling. But when we got in there, whatever he said was so impressive. I don't remember what he said because I was about 10 or 12 years old. But there was a friend of ours whom I heard who spoke, and after a meeting that we had, he suggested that I go and talk to this couple. And I talked to them, and they spoke about Tuskegee later on. At that time, I was a pre-teenager. And he said, I would like for you to go to Tuskegee and see how it looks when you finish high school. So that was the place I wanted to go. My sister, who was rather a little older than I, and she was tops in almost everything she did at Georgia State Industrial College. And I had gone there for a couple of years. And she said to my mother, I don't want Amelia to go back to Georgia State because she will ruin my reputation. So when she said that, I said, I don't want to go anyway. I want to go where I want to go. So Tuskegee was a school that these two people encouraged me to go to. And when I went to Tuskegee, it was astounding. And one of the first people I met was George Washington Carver. He was a student. My husband was a student, and I don't remember exactly when I met him. And yes, I do. I remember. Because his sister was a roommate. And she said, I want you to meet my brother. So in that day, you sit at the end of the table. And when you sit at the end of the table where your girlfriend is, then you sit and you talk during the dinner or breakfast hour. And I came and sat, and she said, this is my brother. So they usually sit until after dinner or breakfast. And she said, this is Samuel William Boynton, and I want you to meet my roommate. And he said, I am very glad to meet you. But when we got to singing the song, I looked around. I didn't even see him. He went on to his girlfriend, and I was left standing up there, and then they all laughed. And I said, well, I don't care. I don't care because I wasn't interested in any fellas. I was just there in school. So that was in, I guess, about 1944. And I taught, and when I taught, I was kicked out because I was trying to put Tuskegee into the school, St. Mary's, where I taught. And they said, you can't do that. You're fired. And I said, I don't care. And of course, my parents had moved and went to Philadelphia. And I went to Philadelphia and spent about 2 months. But when I came back, there was a letter, and the letter was saying, come to Tuskegee, and you are to be interviewed by the U.S. Department of Tuskegee, of U.S. Department of Agriculture. And that's when I met my husband, the man who walked out on me, and I didn't think anything about it.
Oh, I have goosebumps, and I think everyone in the room does too. So, thank you, Amelia. At what point did you decide that the nonviolent direct action was the most effective way to bring about national social change? And when did you first meet Martin Luther King?
Well, I just let God and let go of anything that I thought of. And this is this is a time that we were working to get people to register and vote. And my husband and I, this is the man that I married, and he said, well, we're going to keep on until we get people registered. And one of his words that he said would be, a voteless people is a hopeless people. It was his objective of trying to realize that my mother and father became registered voters. And if they became registered voters, everybody else ought to be able and be capable of becoming registered voters.
And when did you also meet Dr. Martin Luther King? And was there anyone else that you would have considered to have been as great a leader as he was in the movement?
There was nobody. The way I met Dr. King was my sister-in-law was a member of the church that he pastored. And they lived in Montgomery, which was 50 miles from Selma, Alabama. And quite a couple of times we went to his church, and I met him at the pastorate of the church that he was pastoring. And that was the first time we met him. That was before Rosa Parks sat on the bus. But when Rosa Parks sat on the bus and was arrested, then Dr. King was asked to form an organization. And somebody said, here's Mr. A.G., and I forgot his other name, that we'll make him president. And he said, I don't want to be president. We've got a young man who has just started pastoring the Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, and I would like to resign and have him to be nominated. And everybody was happy. And he became the president. And when he became the president, we went to him and fighting to get people to register and vote. And fearful, my husband said that people were afraid, and whites were afraid also. And he said, well, maybe he can come and form the organization we had, which was the Selma Improvement Association, where very few people would attend. And after having met Dr. King and having formed in Montgomery, Alabama, the Montgomery Improvement Association, I asked that he come to Selma and help us to form the same improvement association that they had. And of course, later on, my husband and I did that. But my husband passed, and 2 years afterward, he came to Selma. And there was nobody there but several women that was trying to carry on. And that's when he came to the office, and he said, what I would like to do is to go to the cafe, and it was restricted, or it was segregated. And from then on, we went to the cafes, and he had a meeting. At that time, he was very popular in Montgomery. And we had a meeting at Brown AME Church. And there is where it began to mushroom into SCLC, Southern Christian Leadership Conference.
Selma. Selma is back in the headlines with the recent release of the film of the same name, Selma, which is up for an Academy Award for Best Picture tomorrow. Do you feel the film Selma accurately portrayed this important civil rights event, that is, in our American history? And what else would you like the people to know about what happened in Selma from your perspective?
Definitely, Selma, the movie Selma, it was made because Selma was very popular, and particularly since the 50th anniversary is coming up. And the population was money. Priority was money. And it distorted practically everything. First thing, the women were behind the anniversary and Bloody Sunday. And the women were the ones that were not in any way showed the struggle. Dr. King was the first one to come to the house, because to my house at that time and to Selma and to the popularity was the office that I had, that my husband had for employees. And because of that, we kept the house and the office for the programs of SCLC, and that is where it mushroomed.
Amelia, you ran for Congress in 1964 at a time when only 5%, perhaps, of the African American population was even registered to vote in Dallas County, Alabama. Yet you received 10% of the vote that election. How did you accomplish that? That is historical. How did you do that?
Well, I think I said, let go and let guide you. And I know at 21 years of age, you could register and vote. And my mind said, that part of God said, that you can register and vote and be the leader of all of the others. So what I did, I went down to the registration office, and I just said, I want to register. And they just gave me the pencil and the paper, and I registered and received my card a day or two afterward. And I didn't feel anything. I felt as though this is like walking up and down the steps. This is my right. And I didn't have to argue with them or anything. But they gave me my certificate for registration. And we had only one person because it was segregated.
My final question today is, what do you think about the idea of the youth, the young people, everyone, voting, running for office, really targeting the congressional races in 2016 as independent candidates? What is your thought?
Well, number one is, what about their mothers and fathers? That is the thing that concerns me, because so many of them do not realize that these children are going to step up in their shoes, and they will be the mayors and the congressmen, senators, and so forth. The people, the adults, so many of them, feel that, oh well, let them have it. They will do what is right, and I'll follow along. They want to be the grassroots people, the people who are not realizing that it's like the little story I read about a little boy who was walking behind his father. And they were in the garden, and the father, the little boy was just behind him and said, "Look out, Daddy, look out. I'm walking in your footsteps." And that was a lesson that I try to tell the young people, that it's important for the adults to live in such a way that the children can follow in their footsteps, and they will have to stand up and be counted where they had the children have the respect for them that they will do right. However, they can realize that politically they have to step up to the plate, and if they have any suggestions that they feel that they are not being treated, then they will have to stand up and feel that I want you to be this way, that way, or the other way. But the grassroots people, we have to lift them up and let them know, because I thought about my mother. She said, if we did anything that she could converse with us, she would say, remember, you are kings and queens, and it's up to you to lead others that people can follow. And I was very small then, and everybody said, you think you're white. And that's the way they would curse us out. You think you're white. But no, I felt as though I was a descendant of kings and queens. And she would say, you look up, you straighten yourself up. And I was the tallest person in the basketball, Tuskegee University, and also playing in the choir. So I still feel that with God guiding me, and I do not deviate from what He has controlled me to say that you can't go wrong. But we will have to realize, these young people, that you have to realize that you are making history, that your background will never leave you though you're dead. And it really means a lot to tell these young people that they are making history, and whatever they do or say, it follows behind them, even though they may be gone to glory.
Well, thank you, Amelia. I wanted to close the interview with some final comments and a plug for Village Hope, which we're here for today. And with the record high, according to the Gallup poll right now, there's a record high of 42% of Americans identify themselves as independents, only 25% Republicans, and only 31% Democrats. A recent Rasmussen poll says 53% of likely U.S. voters think neither political party represents the people. And finally, a recent Rasmussen poll also says that over 83% of people want to replace every member of Congress. So, on that note, I want to thank you for being a part of the United We Stand Fest we're holding this summer in Colorado. Colorado is at the forefront of a movement for political change throughout the United States, and I feel humbled to have you on our stage, either on social media, internet, to speak to the young voters, the 18 to 28-year-olds, you out there, you're the game changers. Civil rights activists like Amelia Boynton Robinson have paved the way for a movement for the youth to recognize that for you to be able to vote, you should practice, you should register today, you should run for office, Congressional 16. And also, please go to Amelia Boynton Robinson's website, Village of Hope. I'm going to go online and make a donation today. It's Village of Hope Tuskegee. That's TUSKEGEE.com. Those donations will go towards an amazing cause, a pure cause of Amelia Boynton Robinson today, fighting for your freedom. She has fought for your right to vote. And on that note, Amelia, thank you for coming today. Did you have any final statements before we wrap up the interview?
Well, I have to go back to say that the adults will have to pave the way. And I think of what my mother said. Then instead of holding your heads down, particularly African Americans in the United States, he feels rather inferior. But to say to them, then lift up your heads, ye descendants of Ham, you are brothers of God, and a case to man. For God in his own time sooner than late will raise you again to your former estate as kings and queens. Then all men shall bow to I am that I am, the President of the United States. And the children will rejoice of the people of Ham, the marching American Negro. And that's my prayers for all people that have not reached the top, and to give it to those who are less fortunate than they are. Thank you.
Thank you, Amelia, and I'm looking forward to seeing you this summer at the United We Stand Fest.
Okay.
You're joining the Free and Equal Network today. Again, please go to Village of Hope Tuskegee.com. That's Tuskegee, Tuskegee. Make a donation today for such a worthy cause. Thank you again for joining the Free and Equal Network.